Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at this iPhone 13 Pro, and we're going to make it have the capability of a physical dual SIM. So let's get started. The physical dual SIMs are unique, as with a little bit of additional components inside of this guy, which looks identical from the outside, to a single SIM, and then upgrading to this SIM tray, which has the double-sided SIM you're able to insert them in. But we do have to, on top of soldering on this component, there is some additional work that needs to go into this. So we're going to do that real quick. This phone has already been opened and basically prepped for me to do this. So don't be alarmed with any missing components. We'll take off the screen. We'll take out the battery, disconnect the 5G antenna, and then we'll disconnect all of the flex cables that are holding down the motherboard. And then we can take out the motherboard. Next, I'm going to take some isopropyl alcohol, and I'm going to flood all of the sponge little connector protectors here so that I can easily remove them without any issue. And that way I can reinstall them, because they're just going to shrivel up under the temperature that we're going to put this through. If I save them now, just like that, I'll be able to put them back, and you'll never know, hopefully never know, that I was in here in the first place. And I'm also going to want to save the water damage indicator. I'm going to try to peel that off as well. So we'll just put it right on top of the new SIM tray when the time comes. And on the back side, we'll also want to remove the this graphite heat sink. They're a little tricky to get off without splitting them. Sometimes heat helps. If you get the right layer, then it all tends to come off. And I missed it. So let me go over to the other side. I hate it when I miss it. There, got this one. We'll go nice and slow. And not all of the phones have the 5G antenna, obviously. When they do, you just got to be careful not to mess with it. All right, so from here, we're going to get out our hot plate. I'm going to get out the mold for the iPhone 13 series. Probably should clean that up. Must have forgot to clean off the flux from the last time. Just take a second to do that. All right, it's not perfect, but it'll do. We'll go ahead and stick this down in, turn on our hot plate, and we'll let it get nice and hot. In the meantime, we'll go and stick this guy on, and I'm going to get out my favorite tools. This is a motherboard separating assistant pen. Basically, I'm going to look for the silver one that says iPhone. It's designed to screw into one of these little standoff bolts on the board. That way, I can lift it up when it gets hot. And what we'll do here as well is I'm just going to pin down the SIM tray area and also this corner here. That way I have some resistance when it comes to pull it up. And I'm also going to want to use a very thin flexible tool to slide into the gap just a little bit, give it some twists to help separate it as it's getting hot. All right, now that we're almost up to temperature, I can start to play with the motherboard, see if it's got any type of movement by just kind of wiggling my tool in on one corner. There's the beep letting me know that I'm at temperature, so it should be any minute now where things are loose enough for me to lift. I'm not seeing it just yet. That one popped. So let's see if this side will. Looks like my plate got disconnected for a second, so hopefully it's at temperature still. They tend to hold their temperature for a little while. It did drop. So now we've got to go back up. I'm going to take the temperature up just a little bit more. All right, so it's finally looking like we got some movement. Only had to get up to 203-ish, and now it popped off. We'll turn this guy off. We'll lift off the bottom board and set it off to the side. Cool down for a little bit. And if you've ever taken one of these apart, one of the things that I like to do is remove the thermal compound. It always gets in the way of putting it back together because it never goes back evenly, and because it's somewhat dry, it just creates a kind of a hard high spot, and the top board teeter-totters on it. so it never wants to fully sit. So we'll pop off all of that, and then we'll do the same on the bottom board. Carefully scrape off the heatsink, just like that. Now let's go and take a look at our eSIM IC here, a couple of the components, including one that's over here, and obviously the replacement of this single SIM reader with a dual SIM reader. Alright, so we pulled off the IC there. Alright, I'm going to put down a little bit of flux. Take my iron with a teeny bit of low melt on it. And what we're going to do is add some low melt to the 15 to this resistor right here, along with the pads next to it. Alright, I've got a bunch of little micro jumpers here, and I'm going to start to get them ready. One of the jumpers is going to go right up here on this line. This one gets a jumper as well. I'm going to save this jumper. It goes way down here. Right down. Goes down in there. We'll leave it there for a second and we'll come back to it after we get these in place. Alright, so we got one jumper here, one jumper there, one jumper there. Alright, now before we start flowing this into place, I'm going to grab a donor board. This is a iPhone 8 Plus, and this little resistor right here is what we need. So we'll heat it up. That's a better angle for me. Alright, we'll get this little resistor, and I'm going to drop it down right here. Alright, so we're going to see if we can get all of this to go at the same time. And we popped that one off. Alright, those look good, but I want to flow them back into place just to make sure they're secured. Alright, we'll add some isopropyl alcohol. That looks really good. Now we'll turn our attention to this really annoying one down inside the crevice there. I'll add some flux. We'll go down in with our... Alright, we'll get a little bit longer of a jumper. Hold on to a little bit better. Alright, to do a quick recap looking at the BoardView software, here's what we did. We've got our 13 Pro here, and we went and removed the USIM E IC. Popped off this resistor, the 15 kilo ohm resistor, and we replaced, or we added a 4.7K resistor here in place of this 15K resistor. We ran a jumper on closing up this line and this line as well. And then we ran a jumper closing up this line, and then came down here. You can see here for the dual SIM, everything's been on that, and we ran a line here. Alright, so this communicates with different sections of the SIM tray area, and I went to an 8 Plus and typed in 4.7K, and there are 5, and I toggled through them and I found the resistor here that I wanted, that we went and pulled. This is a 4.7K resistor that I was looking for. Now you probably could get away with simply transferring this 15K resistor over here, but to kind of beef up the line, make sure it has a kind of a cleaner flow, I went to a 4.7. Alright, so now we'll take off the SIM card tray. This is the way that I like to do it. I'll get out a bunch of flux and we'll cover up all of the joints. And I'm going to come in with some... Alright, so I've added some melts to all of the joints. And off comes the card tray. We'll add some flux again. Now we'll come in with some wick and we're going to try to wick out all of these holes. And you can see that all of the ones that weren't ground plane, the solder was cleared from them. But the ones that are ground plane, we'll need to go back in with some heat to help clear those holes. So all of those holes are now clear. Now we'll take our new sim tray and I'm just going to go over the joints with some real quick. This will help because I'm going to go in, I'm going to pre-tin everything that makes contact with the top of the board. And then it doesn't hurt to pre-flux any of the other stuff. And we'll just add a bit of solder to each one of these pads. That's good. We'll go ahead and line up the port, push it on through. Alright, I'm going to add some flux to all of the holes again, and we'll come in with some solder, flow through these holes. And you can definitely feel which ones are ground because they grab more. Like that one. I'm going to turn my airflow way down so we can hit individual spots, and I'm going to use a combination of the iron. That way I don't overheat everything and cause the sim tray to want to fall through or something. There we go. Go ahead and clean up all of the flux. Alright, now we're going to come along the edge here and we're going to clean up and reball the midframe. It's a long and tedious process, but it makes for the install much better because we're replacing the factory solder with a lower melting solder. So we'll just wick up all of the joints, making them nice and flat. Unfortunately, this does remove spacers as well. We'll add some flux around the border where we haven't gone yet. What this also does is it gets rid of any of these cold joints where you can see the solder has gotten really gray. So if you were to try to put it back together with it gray like that, you may run into issues where you get a cold joint. And so you lose certain functions like service or Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. Alright, now that everything has been wicked nicely, I'm going to go ahead and clean everything up. There's a couple of ways to do this. You can use a Q-tip and isopropyl alcohol. You can use other types of flux cleaners. You can use a microfiber cloth and a toothbrush. Oh, and if you notice something like this, make sure you get that out of there. Solder fell down in there. And now we'll do the same on the top board. We got to wick it all off, clean it all off, and grab some flux, and then we'll deposit it all over the board. Alright, we'll grab some low melt, and we'll start to go over all of the joints. And you can see the ones that are oxidized will come back to life. Look at how oxidized this area is. Alright, we'll start wicking this section, and then we'll do the other half of the board after this side is all done. Now we'll do the other side. I'm just going to, again, get out some flux I can paint with, and then I'll just go up the sides. Come in with the low melt again, and we'll get rid of all of the oxidized pads. Alright, we'll clean up the top board now as well and get rid of all of the flux. Alright, that looks good. Alright, so next we'll take our board holder and we'll line up the board inside, grab the stencil for the 13 Pro and slap that on. Make sure the 5G antenna isn't going to cause us issues, and everything should be lined up for us to add some solder paste. Alright, so I'm going to take some solder paste and we'll just kind of smear it into the holes, and we'll just do that all the way around. Alright, now that I've got all of that filled, I'm going to come in with the microfiber cloth and kind of compress all of the solder down into the stencil. Just a little bit more. This will also kind of extract some of the flux, making it a little bit less runny so that it doesn't go everywhere when I heat it up. And it also compacts them into kind of tight groups so they form a nice solder ball. Alright, and then we'll peel it up. And the stencil should come out nice and clean. And all of the solder should be down on the motherboard. Just like that. Alright, now we'll carefully transfer this without touching anywhere the solder is. We'll transfer this to the hot plate. And I'm going to push down on the sim tray with one of the clamps. We'll go ahead and turn this guy back on. And I'm going to lower the temperature down to 175. And we're going to watch this slowly heat up and watch that solder melt. All right, we should be at the point where we start to see some melting happening because this is 150 solder paste. So now that we're above the 150, we should start to see some action. All right, I'm starting to see some melting happening here and there. It's starting to get nice and shiny. All right, this is good enough. We're still going to need to get up into the 180s to install it, but I'm going to go and make sure that all of these are good. All right, so all of the joints, all of the solder did basically solidify. It just needs a little bit of assistance with some flux. So getting the edge all fluxed up just a little bit. We're not using a lot of flux here, just a small amount. That'll help get the solder to be nice and shiny. All right, so we'll take our motherboards and we'll sandwich them together, line them up perfectly, and we'll drop it into place. Make any minor adjustments we need to. Make sure things are perfectly aligned, and we'll watch for that gap to close up. All right, that looks like it's closed up, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. We'll gently take off the clamps. We'll lift up the motherboard slowly, and we'll let this cool down for a second, then we'll go and look at it under a microscope. All right, so looks like this gap closed up nicely. Oh, this is still hot to the touch, super hot. Everything looks good. You can still see the solder on the side, but if we look at it close enough, it's making connection nice and tight here. And then it loosens up here a little bit as well, but I can see that everything is still making connection. Yep, I'm confident now we can go and test it. All right, after looking over the edge nice and thoroughly, I think we are good to kind of put this back together. So I'm going to act as if everything is good, and we'll reinstall all of the heat sinks and connector protectors and everything. You never really know exactly what you're going to get with the slight warping of the motherboard. We'll go ahead and put all of these guys back, making it look like never touched the board. We'll even put back the water damage indicator sticker, and then we'll be ready to put the motherboard back in the phone. So we'll go ahead and slip the motherboard back inside, and then we'll connect up all of the connectors. We're connecting up the 5G antenna, connect up the display, the proximity sensor, and now the battery, and we'll see if we can get it to show an Apple logo. That's a good sign. All right, touch works, and now you can see we've got 2 MEIs. And this phone, although it still needs other stuff put back in it, is good to go as far as that repair is concerned. And that's the process to replacing the single SIM with a dual SIM and all the little modifications that have to go along with it. It's a fun, long, somewhat tedious process, and the same modification can be made on a lot of the iPhones. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Thanks a ton for watching. We'll see you in the next video.